astute. Mere minutes after the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, the Federal Aviation Administration ordered the grounding of all civilian air traffic in the U.S. Travelers were stranded across the country and around the world. 48 hours later, September 13th, an update. Private flights were still prohibited. To take off required government approval at the highest level. That morning, Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia visited the White House. And later that day, something unusual began to happen. Despite the blanket aviation ban, several private planes, from Learjets to a 747, were cleared to depart from various U.S. cities. On board were dozens of the Saudi elite, almost every one of bin Laden or a Saudi royal. Meanwhile, Elizabeth Alderman was desperate to find a way from Paris to New York, where her son Peter was missing.
The bin Laden family, whoever was in the United States, got safe passage home, and I couldn't get home to be with my children. Other families couldn't get to New York, who lived far away, to even begin to look for their children. At this point, we didn't know who was alive or who was dead. I couldn't get home, and the bin Laden family were all able to get home.
To this day, the Bush administration has not even confirmed the existence of those flights to Saudi Arabia. Those Saudi diplomatic sources have been quoted as saying approval for them was granted at the highest level. That the exodus to Saudi Arabia happened at all is one thing. But then there was the investigation that took place before the Saudis departed. It seems there was none. The biggest crime in American history, orchestrated by Osama bin Laden with funds from the bin Laden and Saudi royal families, plane loads of whom were given special dispensation to leave the U.S. almost immediately afterwards, essentially with no interviews to determine what they might know.
No, they just got up and left. The FBI is not been allowed to put Saudis on a terrorism list up until September 11th. They were not allowed to ask these people any questions.
The President of the United States.
The next week, George W. Bush finally threw down the gauntlet on global terror, or so it seemed.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
By then, the Bush administration knew that despite years of Saudi reassurance, 15 of the 19 hijackers had been Saudi nationals. So in the terrible aftermath of September 11th, surely it was now time to track down those who provided money and support for 9/11 wherever they might be. Right? Wrong again, according to former CIA insider Robert Baer.
When George W. Bush says, terrorists, those who harbor them, those who give support to them, are our enemies.
That's obviously not true, because everybody that financed September 11th is currently in Saudi Arabia and free. I mean, it was sort of like if bin Laden had said, well, you know, it's just a coincidence my guys happened to run into your towers. Are we just going to leave him alone?
In the past 2 years, the U.S. has relentlessly prosecuted its war on terror, first invading Afghanistan, which unquestionably harbored and supported al-Qaeda, then occupying Iraq, which had virtually nothing to do with Osama bin Laden. But despite all their with us or against us rhetoric, the U.S. has given Saudi Arabia, which spawned the mastermind, the manpower, and the money for 9/11, a free pass. The CIA, for example, ignored intelligence about the hijackers gathered by a number of foreign countries before and after September 11th. The Fifth Estate has obtained documents, like these phone records from German intelligence, showing calls made by key members of the 9/11 plot to Saudi Arabia that the Americans chose not to pursue. And nowhere was that attitude more obvious than in the report of the congressional investigation into the September 11th attacks.
The community made mistakes prior to September 11th,
The hearings on Capitol Hill began several months after 9/11. They were to be the definitive inquiry into what happened and why, focusing on what U.S. intelligence agencies knew or should have known. Eleanor Hill was the committee's chief investigator.
In the fall of 1998, the intelligence community received information concerning a bin Laden plot involving aircraft.
The much-anticipated report was more than 800 pages long. But since it was released this past summer, most of the attention has focused on 28 of those pages. One chapter that is almost completely redacted, ordered classified by the White House, and blacked out to the public.
And because they're classified, I can't tell you what's in those pages. I can tell you that the chapter deals with information that our committees found in FBI and CIA files that was very disturbing. It had to do with sources of foreign support for the hijackers, or alleged sources of foreign support for the hijackers.
Yeah. Now, I know it is believed and has been reported that many of those 27 or 28 redacted pages deal with the Saudi relationship to the hijackers, but
That's what the press has said. I haven't said that.